I recently took a 10-day trip back to my home city of Perth, Western Australia, where I just got to relax, catch up with family, some old friends, and do some photography while I was there. And because I was traveling light, I just took my Leica MA and two lenses, but I ended up mainly using one of the two lenses about 95% of the time, which was the Thypoch Eureka 50mm f2, which I've covered in a full review on the channel previously. So if you want to check that out, I'll put a link to it. But in this video, I just wanted to do an updated thoughts type of thing where I would go over some new findings, share some new sample images, my experience traveling with the lens, and answer some questions that people had in my initial review, especially in terms of whether to go for the brass or the aluminium version, and things like how different the finish is, the feel of them, and which one is better value for money, or is it worth paying the extra for the brass version. So I'll share some of the images that I took throughout the trip, including some of the street photography I did with this lens, and just general everyday stuff. Like I said, I ended up using this for about 90 to 95% of the shots I took while I was there, since the other lens I took was a 28mm. So I wanted to cover both extremes of, my everyday setup. But with Perth and things were just generally slower paced and I'm shooting from further distances usually or wanting to isolate subjects, I just ended up enjoying using this, especially because it is so light and compact. And if I was indecisive about whether to take the camera or not, having the Eureka 50 mounted to the MA and collapsed, I could even just wrap the strap like this and just fit it in a jacket pocket or like an oversized shirt pocket and just ended up taking it with me, or in a really compact little Ulanzi tech pouch that I was carrying around while I was there. So I won't rehash too much from that old video because again, you can just go watch that if you want. But overall, I quite enjoyed the feel and experience of using this lens, but also the resulting images that I got from it. And with the trip that I just took and some of the images you're seeing on the screen now, I decided to shoot a roll of my favorite color negative film, which is Kodak Ektar 100. And a film like that really allows you to test a lens quite thoroughly because the film itself is quite fine-grained and has a high resolving power. So overall, I was quite happy with the shots that I got. They echoed what I'd already covered in my first video. I enjoyed that little bit of a vintage character, but just the versatility of the type of images you can get. You don't have to worry about whether or not you shoot it wide open. I didn't bother with the hood for the vast majority of the trip because I don't find it flares too much. The contrast is quite nice. The color rendition, especially with some of these shots with Ektar, I did some test shots just, of this kangaroo paw in the back of my mum's garden, and it just renders beautifully with those out of focus kind of bokeh shots if you want to do portraits and such. And as an everyday walkabout lens, I think that's where this really shines if you enjoy the 50mm focal length. Walking around the beach, snapping shots of, these pelicans and stopping the lens down a little bit to 5.6 or shooting it a little bit quicker like I would on the street. I did use it for some street shots on the black and white examples you're seeing. I caught up with my good friend Cooper back in Perth, who has the channel Shoots with Coops. In case you're not already familiar with him, go check that out. I took a lot of shots of just hanging around at home, catching up with family, and it just works really well for that kind of everyday life stuff. But then if you want to use it for some f2 shots, you don't have to be afraid to open it up. I went to visit Silver Halide Studios, which is an awesome lab over in Perth that I've been meaning to check out for a while. Got to know the owners, took some portraits of one of the staff members and of the main owners and their dog out the front of the lab, and I'm really happy with how the images came out. It means that I didn't really miss taking the Sonar f1.5 lens. Although I might prefer the characteristics of that lens a little bit more, this is much cheaper. So if you're out there in the market, you can go back and check my comparisons to see maybe why I might have preferred the bokeh or something like that. But just as a more everyday lens, I think this worked quite well. So all in all, I still like the performance. I still think it's a good deal, but let's move more into that now with the pricing, the value, and whether to go for the aluminium version or the brass version. So I had questions in my last video whether the finish on the brass version is different. And yes, as you can see from some of the B-roll and even maybe just here, the finish on the brass version does have a slightly maybe darker look to it. It's a little bit more metallic. The aluminium version has a bit of a lighter appearance in terms of color, but to me, that's pretty insignificant. Sure, I do think the brass version looks a little bit better in terms of the finish, but you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference. Same with the feel of the lens. I did compare them in terms of the feel of the focus ring and the aperture ring, and I can't really tell. If anything, because the aluminium version is that much lighter, it just has a slightly lighter feel to it. So maybe it does, give you the feeling that it's easier to turn the rings, but it's pretty insignificant. It's still solid and smooth, which is the important thing. But the big thing you'll notice is the weight, the actual weight of the lens. This actually feels quite light in the hand, whereas the brass one is small, but has a bit of heft to it. You can feel that it's made from brass. So the weight is actually significantly different between the two. Overall though, is it worth paying extra for the brass? I think for most people, it's probably not worth paying extra for the brass. If you are a collector, if you want to own this lens forever and you think that you just like having that premium look and feel and just know that maybe it will last longer, maybe it'll be more resistant. And I would suggest that if you just want a good value lens, a good all-rounder, just go for the aluminium one. Sure, maybe if you have the money to spend, go for the brass. But I think for most people, the price point of the aluminium is what makes this lens such good value. Once you step up to brass, a bit of that value proposition is gone because you're not getting any more performance. It's the same glass, same little features, you're going to get the same images. Okay, and if anything, maybe having a lighter lens might be better for you if you travel as well. So my thoughts haven't changed on that. I still think it's a good deal. And another incentive for this video is that the timing right now, being the lead up to Black Friday sales, Thypoch is doing a sale on this lens, I believe from now until very early December, maybe the 2nd or 3rd. I'll put the details in the description, but they did give me a code that you can use for free shipping as well. So their Black Friday deal is open to anyone. You can use my link, my affiliate link in the description of this video. So yes, that does mean I make a commission if you use my link to buy yourself anything from the Thypoch store, but it doesn't cost you any more than if you hadn't used that link. So it's just a nice way to support the channel. If you want to, you can feel free to use anyone else's link if you want. But yeah, there is also that special code to give you free shipping, which I think sweetens the deal even more. You get the lens, you get the hood, the filter, it's nicely packaged, and it could make a good all-round 50mm lens if you're in the market for something. I know maybe I didn't address everything in this video. This wasn't really scripted or overly planned. I just thought I would do it spontaneously as a video since I just got back from Perth. And by the way, I will be doing a vlog covering my trip to Perth in a little bit more detail, but it might take me a while to release that on the channel. Vlogs are usually pretty hard and long to edit, and life has just been really crazy and busy at the moment, especially leading up to the new year. So uploads might be a little bit slower, but bear with me if it means I release it early next year. Hopefully you'll get to watch that when it releases. I also have a little mini interview with the guys from Silver Halide and more Perth and just general life update stuff that I'm saving for that video. But for the time being, I hope you got something out of this. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to suggest any other videos that you'd like to see. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.